stepmom told everyone my real mom abandoned me. So at her birthday party, I read her old emails begging my dad for custody. She went silent. The entire living room went silent, actually. 30 people holding cake plates, frozen mid-bite. My stepmom Bridget's face drained of color. My dad looked like he might vomit. I'd spent 3 months preparing for this moment. 3 months since I'd found the hidden folder on Dad's old laptop, the one he thought he'd wiped before giving it to me for college. Turns out he'd only deleted the files from the desktop, not the backup drive. There they were, hundreds of emails from my real mom. Subject lines like, "Please let me see Autumn and I'm begging you." I was told she'd walked out when I was 2, that she chose drugs over me, that she'd signed away her rights without a fight. Every birthday, every Mother's Day, Bridget would sigh dramatically about how hard it was raising someone else's abandoned child. The truth was uglier. Mom had left my dad after catching him cheating with Bridget. She'd fought for custody, but Dad had money for better lawyers. Mom was still in grad school, living in a studio apartment, working nights. The judge called her unstable, gave my dad full custody with supervised visitation only. Then Dad moved us 6 hours away and changed our phone number. Mom's emails grew desperate. "I have a right to see my daughter. Please, I'm her mother." Dad never responded, just kept forwarding them to Bridget with comments like, "See what we're dealing with?" When I turned 8, the emails stopped. I found out why last month when I tracked her down. She'd been in a car accident, traumatic brain injury, spent 2 years in rehabilitation learning to walk and talk again. By the time she recovered, I was 11 and fully convinced she'd abandoned me. Standing at that birthday party, I held my printed stack of emails like evidence in a trial. I started reading them aloud. Mom begging for visitation. Mom sending medical records proving she was stable. Every single one ignored. Bridget tried to stop me. My aunt called it inappropriate. Dad demanded I leave. But I kept reading. I told them about the birthday cards in a box in the garage. 43 cards I never got. About how Bridget had won a community service award for raising an abandoned child. I told them Mom had tried to kill herself after losing me. That she'd survived. And when I showed up at her door 3 months ago, she just held me and cried. Then I announced I was moving in with her. That I'd already transferred colleges. That I'd called about Bridget's award and they wanted it back. I walked out to my car where Mom was waiting. Through the window, I could see the party imploding. Bridget screaming, guests arguing. As we pulled away, I saw Dad burst through the front door, phone pressed to his ear. He pointed at our car, then ran back inside. Mom glanced in the rearview mirror nervously. When we arrived at Mom's apartment an hour later, 2 police cars were waiting. An officer approached as we parked. Dad had filed a missing persons report. There was also a claim about stolen property. The laptop. The documents. They led me toward the police car while Mom stood helpless on the sidewalk. She'd just gotten me back after 16 years. Before I got in, another car pulled up. Bridget stepped out, makeup fixed, hair perfect, phone already recording. She walked toward the officers, her voice breaking as she spoke to the camera. She was already spinning the narrative, already positioning herself as the victim, the loving stepmom whose ungrateful daughter had stolen from them and run away. By tomorrow, it would be all over social media. The officer opened the car door. I looked back at Mom one last time. Her face was pale, tears streaming down. She'd fought for me once and lost everything. Now she was about to lose me again. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. They put me in an interview room with beige walls and a metal table bolted to the floor. The kind of room designed to make you confess to things you didn't do. Officer Delgado sat across from me, notepad open. He looked tired, like he'd been dealing with family drama all day, and mine was just another entry in a long list. "Your father says you stole his laptop and personal documents. Is that true?" I kept my voice steady. The laptop was a gift. He gave it to me 6 months ago when I got accepted to college. The documents were emails addressed to me, from my mother. He wrote something down. "Your father claims those emails were his private correspondence. My mother sent them begging to see me. They're about me. How are they private?" Officer Delgado sighed. He clearly didn't want to be mediating a custody battle for an 18-year-old. "Look, you're legally an adult. You can live wherever you want. But if your father's claiming theft, we need to sort this out." The door opened and another officer walked in with my dad and Bridget. Mom wasn't allowed in because she wasn't considered family in any legal sense. 16 years of separation meant she had no rights here. Dad looked different than he had at the party. Composed, calculated, the mask he wore in business meetings. "Autumn, we're worried about you. This woman has clearly manipulated you into believing, this woman is my mother. Her name is Vivian." Bridget dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "After everything we've done for you. We gave you a stable home, paid for your education, with child support money from my mom. I'd found those records too. She'd been paying the entire time, even when she couldn't afford it. Even after the accident when she was in rehab and could barely work." Officer Delgado held up a hand. "Let's focus on the immediate issue. The laptop and documents. Did you take them without permission? The laptop was mine? A gift. I can prove it with text messages. As for the documents, I made copies. The originals are still on his computer." Dad's jaw tightened. "You accessed my private files without authorization. You left them on a laptop you gave me. I found them by accident, and then I read them because they were about me, about my mother, about 16 years of lies." The room went quiet. Officer Delgado looked between us, trying to decide if this was a criminal matter or a family problem he couldn't solve. Finally, he spoke. "Mr. Reynolds, your daughter is 18, Legally, she can possess those emails since they concern her directly. The laptop situation is murky, but if you gave it to her as a gift, it's technically hers. Dad stood abruptly. This is unacceptable. She's being influenced by a woman who abandoned her responsibilities. I didn't abandon anything. Mom appeared in the doorway, escorted by another officer. I fought for my daughter every single day until your lawyers buried me in paperwork I couldn't afford to fight. Ma'am, you need to wait outside, Officer Delgado said. No. Mom's voice was firm. I've waited 16 years. I have documentation proving I paid child support, proving I attended every supervised visit until he moved away, proving I sent letters and gifts that were never delivered. I have my medical records from the accident. And I have character witnesses who will testify that I never stopped trying to reach my daughter. She pulled out a folder from her bag, thicker than mine, more organized. She'd been preparing for this moment longer than I had. Officer Delgado took the folder, flipping through pages of printed emails, bank statements, medical records, court documents. His expression shifted as he read. Mr. Reynolds, did you relocate specifically to prevent court-ordered visitation? It was for work, Dad said quickly. The court order specifies you were required to provide updated contact information and maintain visitation schedules even after relocation. According to these records, you never filed the required paperwork. That's a civil matter, not criminal. True, but it establishes a pattern of behavior that makes your theft claim look less credible. Officer Delgado closed the folder. Here's what's going to happen. Autumn is an adult. She can live where she chooses. The laptop was a gift, so that's not theft. The emails were about her, so accessing them isn't a crime. As for the missing persons report, I'm closing it since she's standing right here, clearly not missing. Dad's face turned red. This is absurd. She's been manipulated. She's been lied to, Mom interrupted. For 16 years. By you. And you're upset because she found out the truth. Bridget grabbed Dad's arm. Let's just go. This is embarrassing. Embarrassing? I stood up. You made a career out of my fake abandonment story. You wrote blog posts about it. You gave speeches at parenting conferences. You built your entire online presence around being the hero who rescued an unwanted child. Bridget's eyes flashed. I did rescue you. Your mother was in no condition. My mother had a traumatic brain injury from a car accident. She spent 2 years learning to walk again, to speak again. And the entire time, you were posting Instagram stories about how I called you mom and forgot all about the woman who gave birth to me. Officer Delgado stood. This conversation needs to happen somewhere else. You're all free to go. We filed out of the police station into the parking lot. Dad and Bridget headed to their car without looking back. Mom and I stood by hers, watching them drive away. Are you okay? Mom asked. I'm tired. So tired I could barely stand. Let's go home. Home. The word felt strange. I'd lived in Dad's house for 16 years, but it had never felt like home. Mom's apartment was small, cramped, filled with secondhand furniture. But when she said home, I believed her. We drove in silence. My phone kept buzzing. Text messages from my Aunt Christy, from Bridget's sister Deanna, from Dad's business partner Wesley. All of them telling me I'd made a mistake, that I was ungrateful, that I'd ruined a good family. I turned my phone off. When we got to Mom's apartment, she made tea while I collapsed on the couch. The adrenaline was wearing off and everything hurt. My head, my chest, my entire body felt like it had been through a fight. Mom brought 2 mugs of chamomile and sat beside me. We need to talk about what happens next. I already enrolled at State University, near here. I start in 3 weeks. That's good. But your father isn't going to let this go quietly. He'll try to control the narrative, make himself look like the victim. She was right. By morning, Bridget's social media would be flooded with tearful posts about her ungrateful stepdaughter. Dad would tell everyone I'd been brainwashed. Their friends would rally around them because that's what people do. They protect the story they already believe. I have a lawyer, Mom said. She helped me with the custody case originally. She's been keeping records of every attempt I made to contact you over the years. If your father tries to sue for defamation or anything else, we have documentation. I don't want to go to court again. I just want to live my life. I know. Mom squeezed my hand. But sometimes you have to fight to get peace. I spent that night in Mom's spare room, surrounded by boxes of my things I'd moved in over the past week. My childhood bedroom at Dad's house had been repainted the day after I'd announced I was leaving. Bridget had turned it into a yoga studio, like I'd never existed. My phone stayed off for 3 days. When I finally turned it back on, there were 247 messages. Most of them were from people I barely knew, offering unsolicited opinions about family loyalty and respect. But there were a few that mattered. My best friend Roslyn wrote, I always thought it was weird how Bridget talked about your mom. Like she enjoyed telling that story too much. I'm glad you found the truth. My English teacher, Mr. Hartwell, wrote, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is question the story you've been told your whole life. Proud of you. And one from my younger half-brother Camden, Bridget's biological son. Dad's mad, but he'll get over it. I saved some of your stuff before Mom threw it out. Let me know if you want it. Camden was only 14, too young to fully understand what had happened, but old enough to know something wasn't right. I texted him back. Thanks, I'd like that. Over the next 2 weeks, I settled into a routine with Mom. She worked as a paralegal at a small law firm downtown. I picked up a job at a coffee shop to help with rent. We'd have dinner together every night, talking about everything except Dad and Bridget. Mom told me about her life before the accident. She'd been studying environmental law, hoping to work for conservation organizations. After the accident, she'd had to drop out. By the time she recovered, her student loans were in default and she couldn't afford to go back. She'd worked her way up from file clerk to paralegal over 10 years. She'd never remarried, never even dated seriously. Too focused on recovery and trying to find a way back to me. I told her about my childhood, the small things Dad and Bridget had done to erase her, how they'd removed her from every family photo, how Bridget had a story ready for every occasion about why I didn't have a real mother, how I'd been taught to call Bridget Mom from the time I could talk. Mom cried when I told her about the birthday cards in the garage. She'd spent hours picking them out each year, writing messages she hoped I'd someday read. Dad had kept them like evidence of her failure, rather than proof of her love. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I started college. State University was bigger than I'd expected. Overwhelming in a good way. Nobody here knew my story. I was just another freshman trying to figure out the campus map. I'd signed up for an English literature class, intro psychology, environmental science, and a writing seminar. The writing seminar was small, only 12 students, led by Professor Yamilet Rosario. She had gray hair pulled into a loose bun and wore vintage band t-shirts under blazer jackets. On the first day, she asked us to write about a moment that changed our understanding of truth. I stared at the blank page for 20 minutes before the words came. When I was 18, I discovered my entire childhood was built on a lie. I wrote for an hour, filling pages with everything that had happened. When class ended, everyone else had left. Professor Rosario was reading at her desk. "That's powerful work," she said without looking up. "Painful, but powerful. It's all true. The best writing usually is." She finally met my eyes. "Would you be interested in expanding this? Turning it into a longer piece?" "Maybe. I'm still figuring out how I feel about it." "Fair enough. But if you decide to, I'm here." I walked back to Mom's apartment through falling leaves. Autumn in a new city. A new life. It felt symbolic in a way that made me cringe, but also hopeful. When I got home, there was a package waiting. From Camden. Inside were photos from my childhood that Bridget had thrown away. Me as a toddler. Me in Halloween costumes. Me at school plays. All evidence of the girl I'd been before I understood I was living in a carefully constructed fiction. At the bottom of the box was a note in Camden's messy handwriting. "I don't understand everything that happened, but I know Mom and Dad lied about your mom. I'm sorry. You're still my sister." I called him that night. He answered on the first ring. Hey. Thanks for the box." Silence. Then, "Is it true? About your real mom?" "Yeah. All of it. Mom's been crying a lot. Dad's been working late every night. Everything feels wrong here now. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to blow up your life too." "You didn't." "They did." Camden's voice cracked. He was at that age where he wanted to sound tough but couldn't quite manage it. "I found some of the emails on Dad's computer. After you left, I started looking. There were hundreds. You should delete those. Focus on school, on your friends." "But they lied." "I know, and that sucks. But you're 14 and you still have to live there. Don't make it harder on yourself." He was quiet for a long time. "Do you hate them?" I thought about it. "No. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But I don't hate them. I think they convinced themselves they were doing the right thing. That's what people do when they do terrible things. They tell themselves a story where they're the hero. Are you happy now? With your real mom?" "Yeah, I think I am." "Good. That's good." We talked for another hour about nothing important. His basketball team, my classes, normal sibling stuff we'd never really had before. After we hung up, Mom came out of her room. "How is he?" "Confused, trying to make sense of it." "That's normal. He's a good kid. None of this is his fault." "I know. I just wish it hadn't happened this way. I wish Dad and Bridget had just told me the truth years ago." Mom sat beside me on the couch. People rarely choose honesty when lies are easier, and they'd built so much on those lies. Their marriage, their reputation, Bridget's entire identity. Admitting the truth would have meant dismantling all of it. She was right. Dad and Bridget had trapped themselves. Every year they maintained the lie made it harder to tell the truth. By the time I was old enough to understand, they were in too deep. The fall semester progressed. I fell into the rhythm of classes and work, made friends with a girl named Felicity in my psychology class. She was studying social work, wanted to help kids in foster care. We'd study together at the campus library, complaining about our professors and eating terrible vending machine food. I didn't tell her about my family situation at first. It felt good to just be a normal college student with normal problems. But one night, while we were studying for midterms, she got a call from her little sister. I could only hear Felicity's side of the conversation, but it was clear something was wrong at home. After she hung up, she looked defeated. "My stepdad is drunk again. My sister is hiding in her room. I'm sorry. It's fine. It's always fine until it's not." She rubbed her eyes. "Sorry, you don't need to hear about my family drama." "I get it. Family drama is my specialty." And then I told her everything. About Dad and Bridget and Mom and the emails and the birthday party confrontation. She listened without interrupting, nodding in the right places. When I finished, she said, "That's awful, but also kind of badass. You exposed them in front of everyone. It felt necessary at the time. Now I'm not sure it changed anything. They still believe they're the victims." "Of course they do. People like that always do." Felicity leaned back in her chair. "My stepdad tells everyone my mom trapped him with a pregnancy, like she got pregnant on purpose to ruin his life. Never mind that he was the one who didn't want to use protection. Never mind that he proposed. In his version, he's the victim and we're the burden. Do you ever call him out on it?" Used to. Doesn't help. He just doubles down, gets defensive, sometimes violent. So now I just avoid him and wait until I can move out. We sat in silence for a while. Then Felicity said, "You know what's messed up? We spent our whole childhoods learning to survive our parents. And then we spend our whole adulthoods trying to undo the damage they did." She wasn't wrong. A month into the semester, Bridget's Instagram post went viral. She'd written a long caption about the pain of raising someone else's child only to have them turn against you. She'd positioned herself as the selfless stepmom who sacrificed everything for an ungrateful girl who chose her deadbeat biological mother over the family who actually raised her. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. Thousands of strangers offering sympathy to Bridget and judgment toward me. Some even sent me hateful messages after finding my social media. "You're an ungrateful brat. Bridget loved you and you threw it in her face. Your real mom probably is a deadbeat." I made my accounts private and tried to ignore it, but the damage was done. Bridget had gotten ahead of the narrative. In her version of events, I was the villain. Mom wanted to respond publicly with the court documents and emails, prove that Bridget was lying, but I stopped her. It won't change anything. The people who believe her want to believe her. Facts won't matter, so we just let her lie. We let her tell her story, and we live our truth. Eventually, the right people will see through it. I wasn't sure I believed that, but I didn't know what else to do. Professor Rosario pulled me aside after class one day. "I saw the social media situation. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. You're allowed to not be fine." "I know. But if I start falling apart, I don't know if I'll be able to put myself back together." She nodded. "Fair enough. But if you need an extension on any assignments, just let me know. Actually, I've been working on that piece you mentioned, about truth and lies and family. It's gotten pretty long. I'd like to read it when you're ready to share." I emailed her the draft that night. 40 pages of raw, unfiltered thoughts about growing up in a constructed reality. About the moment I discovered my mother wasn't who I'd been told she was. About the birthday party and the police station and the aftermath. Professor Rosario responded the next day. "This is extraordinary. Have you considered submitting it somewhere? There are literary journals that publish personal essays like this. I don't know if I'm ready for more people to read it. Think about it. Stories like yours matter. They help other people feel less alone." Over Thanksgiving break, I stayed with Mom instead of going back to Dad's house. Camden called to say Bridget was cooking a huge meal and inviting extended family. They'd told everyone I was too busy with school to come home. Easier than admitting I'd chosen not to. Mom and I made a simple dinner. Just turkey sandwiches and canned cranberry sauce. It was perfect. We spent the evening going through old photo albums Mom had kept. Pictures of me as a baby. Her holding me in the hospital. Me taking my first steps. All the memories I didn't have because they'd been taken from me. "This was my favorite age," Mom said, pointing to a photo of toddler me covered in birthday cake. "You were so funny, so fearless. You'd climb everything, jump off anything. I had to watch you constantly. What happened? After Dad got custody?" Mom's smile faded. "I fought for 2 years. Spent every penny I had on lawyers. Showed up to every supervised visit, even when you cried because you didn't remember me. Your dad and Bridget were already calling themselves your parents. Already rewriting history. The judge said stability was more important than biology. That's horrible. It destroyed me. I won't lie about that. After the accident, after losing the final custody appeal, I didn't want to live anymore. I took those pills because I couldn't imagine a life where you weren't my daughter. I'm glad you survived. Me too. Obviously, it took a long time. Therapy, medication, support groups. But eventually, I rebuilt myself. And I promised that if I ever got the chance to be your mother again, I wouldn't waste it. You're not wasting it." We spent the rest of the night watching bad movies and eating too much pie. Normal mother-daughter things I'd never experienced with Bridget. With Bridget, everything had been performative, Instagram-worthy, perfectly curated moments designed to prove she was an amazing mother. With Mom, it was just real. December brought finals and winter weather. I was stressed about exams, but also excited. I'd submitted my essay to a literary journal Professor Rosario recommended. She didn't think they'd accept it since I was just a freshman, but she said the practice of submitting was valuable. I didn't expect to hear back until January at the earliest. So when I got the email in mid-December, I assumed it was a rejection. Instead, it said, "We're pleased to accept your essay for publication in our spring issue." I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Mom screamed when I told her. Actually screamed. Then she cried. Then she called everyone she knew to tell them her daughter was going to be published. I called Professor Rosario, who sounded pleased but not surprised. "I told you it was extraordinary. But I'm just a freshman. I'm nobody. You're a writer who has something important to say. That's all that matters." The essay was scheduled to run in March. They'd edit it and send me revisions in January. Until then, I tried to focus on finishing the semester strong. I got A's in all my classes except environmental science, where I got a B+. Mom said she was proud regardless. We celebrated by going to an expensive restaurant we couldn't afford and ordering too much food. Things felt stable, normal, like maybe I'd actually escaped the chaos of my old life and built something new. Then, 3 days after Christmas, Dad showed up at Mom's apartment. I was home alone. Mom was at work. I opened the door thinking it was a package delivery. "We need to talk," Dad said. I should have closed the door, called Mom, called the police. Instead, I stood there frozen. "You've embarrassed this family enough." Dad walked past me into the apartment without invitation. This ends now. What ends? This crusade? This victim act? You got what you wanted. You're living with her. Now stop trying to destroy everything else. I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm just living my life. He pulled out his phone, showing me Bridget's Instagram. Look at what you've done to her. She's depressed. Barely eating. You broke her heart. She built her entire identity on a lie. What did she expect? She loved you, raised you, and you threw it all back in her face. She didn't raise me. She played house with someone else's kid so she could feel like a hero. Dad's face turned red. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll take away my laptop again? Call the police with fake charges? You don't have power over me anymore. You're still my daughter, biologically. But that's where it ends. You made sure I didn't have a relationship with my actual mother. You kept letters, hid birthday cards, moved 6 hours away to prevent court-ordered visits. You did everything possible to erase her. I did what was best for you. You did what was easiest for you. There's a difference. We stood there, 2 feet apart, years of unspoken anger filling the space between us. Finally, Dad said, I want you to retract your story. Tell people you were confused, that we never kept you from your mother. I can't do that. It's not true. Then I'll sue you for defamation. Go ahead. Mom has documentation of everything. Court records, emails, bank statements showing she paid child support. You claimed she never paid. You'll lose. I'll bury you in legal fees. You're 18. Working at a coffee shop. You can't afford to fight me. He was right about that. I couldn't afford a legal battle. But I also couldn't take back the truth. Do what you need to do, I said. But I'm not lying for you. Dad stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. I locked the door behind him and immediately called Mom. She came home early from work. We sat on the couch while I explained what had happened. She was calm. Too calm. He's bluffing, she said. He won't sue. It would require him to produce evidence in court. Everything would become public record. All the emails, all the custody documents. Everyone would see what he did. You sure? Pretty sure. But I'll call my lawyer tomorrow just in case. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation with Dad. The anger in his voice. The desperation. He wasn't upset because I'd hurt him. He was upset because I'd exposed him. The spring semester started in January. I had new classes, new schedule, new routine. I signed up for an advanced writing workshop with Professor Rosario. We'd be working on longer pieces throughout the semester. I also started seeing a therapist. Dr. Nora Huang specialized in family trauma. She had an office near campus with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. Every week, I'd sit across from her and try to untangle 16 years of manipulation. It's common for children of divorce to be told narratives about the absent parent, Dr. Huang explained during one session. But what your father and stepmother did went beyond that. They systematically erased your mother from your life while building themselves up as saviors. That's psychological manipulation. Is there a name for it? Parental alienation. It's a form of emotional abuse. The alienating parent demonizes the other parent to the point where the child rejects them without justification. But I didn't reject her. I didn't know she was trying to reach me. Exactly. They controlled the narrative so completely that you couldn't make an informed choice. That's what makes it particularly damaging. I thought about Camden, still living in that house, still subject to Dad and Bridget's version of reality. What about my brother? Should I tell him what I'm learning? That depends. How old is he? 14. That's a difficult age. Old enough to understand, but young enough to be dependent on his parents. If you share too much, it might force him to choose sides before he's ready. So I just let him believe their lies? You give him space to come to his own conclusions. Answer his questions honestly if he asks. But don't force a narrative on him the way your father forced one on you. It felt like the hardest thing in the world, knowing the truth but having to let Camden find it himself. In February, I got the edited version of my essay back from the journal. They'd tightened some sections and cut about 500 words, but the core story remained the same. My name would be on it. My truth would be public. I sent a copy to Camden before it published. He needed to hear it from me first. He called 2 hours later. Is all of this true? Every word. Silence, heavy breathing. He was crying. I'm sorry, I said. I know this is a lot. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why did they lie? Because lies are easier than truth. Because they'd rather protect their image than face what they did. What should I do? Whatever you need to do. If you need to hate me for writing this, that's okay. If you need to confront them, that's okay. If you need to pretend you never read it, that's okay too. I don't want to pretend anymore. Camden's voice was steadier now. I'm tired of pretending everything is normal when it's not. The essay published in March. Within a week, it had been shared thousands of times online, people commenting about their own experiences with parental alienation, others criticizing me for airing family business publicly. A few journalists reached out asking if I'd be willing to do interviews. I declined. The essay said everything I needed to say. Bridget responded with her own essay on her blog. She painted herself as the victim of a smear campaign, claimed I'd fabricated evidence, said my real mom had manipulated me into turning against my family. But this time, people pushed back. Readers who'd seen the court documents I'd referenced, other women who'd experienced parental alienation, even some of Bridget's former followers questioning why her story kept changing. The community service organization formally revoked her award. They released a statement saying they'd been misled about the circumstances of my mother's absence, that their award was meant for genuine caregivers, not people who actively prevented a child from knowing their biological parent. Bridget's Instagram went private after that. Her blog stopped updating. The carefully crafted image she'd built over 16 years was crumbling. I didn't feel victorious. Mostly I felt sad. Sad for the years we'd all lost to lies. Sad for Camden, who was stuck in the middle. Sad for Mom, who'd missed my entire childhood. In April, Dad filed for bankruptcy. His business partner Wesley had pulled out after reading my essay. Too much negative publicity. Dad's clients had started leaving. His reputation, like Bridget's, was built on an image that no longer held up under scrutiny. I should have felt guilty. Maybe I did, a little. But mostly, I felt like consequences had finally caught up with actions. Camden started therapy around that time. He called me every week to talk through what he was learning. About manipulation, about truth, about how families can be toxic even when they look perfect from the outside. He asked if he could spend the summer with me and Mom. I said yes without hesitation. Dad didn't fight it. Maybe he knew he'd lost. Maybe he was too busy trying to save his failing business. Either way, Camden showed up in June with 2 suitcases and a backpack full of pain. Mom set up the spare room for him, made his favorite dinner, treated him like he'd always been her son too. Camden and I spent that summer rebuilding what we'd never really had. Sibling connection, trust, honest conversation. He'd ask questions about Mom, about the custody case, about everything Dad and Bridget had hidden. I'd answer as truthfully as I could without trying to poison him against them. One night, we were sitting on Mom's balcony watching the sunset. Camden said, "Do you think Dad knows what he did was wrong? I think Dad has convinced himself he was protecting me, that he was the good guy in this story. People can justify terrible things when they need to. Do you forgive him? I don't know. Forgiveness feels like it requires remorse. And he's not sorry. He's just sorry he got caught. What about Bridget?" I thought about it. Bridget is harder. Because I think part of her really believed she was rescuing me. She wanted to be the hero so badly that she turned my actual mother into a villain. That kind of self-delusion is almost scarier than intentional cruelty. Camden nodded. I think I hate her more than Dad. At least Dad has the excuse of wanting to keep you away from Mom because of their divorce. Bridget just wanted the credit without doing the work. He was more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. By the end of summer, Camden had decided he wanted to live with us permanently. Dad fought it this time, hired a lawyer, tried to argue that Mom was an unfit guardian who'd stolen one child and was now trying to steal another. The judge reviewed the case, looked at the evidence, interviewed Camden privately. In the end, the ruling was simple. A 15-year-old has the right to choose which parent he lives with, and Camden chose us. Dad stopped speaking to me after that, blocked my number, removed me from his social media. In his version of events, I was the one who'd abandoned him. Sophomore year was better. I'd found my rhythm at school, had real friends, a job I didn't hate, a family that functioned on honesty instead of performance. I kept writing, longer pieces, more complicated stories. Professor Rosario encouraged me to apply for a creative nonfiction workshop over winter break, a competitive program at a writing center in Vermont. I didn't think I'd get in, but I applied anyway. When the acceptance letter came in November, I cried. Mom cried. Camden rolled his eyes and said we were both dramatic, but he smiled while he said it. The workshop was in January, 2 weeks of intensive writing with published authors and other serious students. I was terrified and excited and convinced I didn't belong there. But I went anyway. The workshop changed everything, not because I learned some secret technique or met some important person, but because for the first time, I was surrounded by people who understood that writing was more than just words on a page. It was excavation, taking painful experiences and transforming them into something meaningful. One of the instructors, a woman named Hadley Brixton who'd written a memoir about escaping a cult, pulled me aside during the second week. "Your work is visceral," she said. "You're not afraid to go to the dark places. That's rare in someone your age. I've had practice with dark places, clearly. But here's the thing. Trauma is a resource until it becomes a crutch. You need to make sure you're writing toward healing, not just dwelling in pain. How do you know the difference? When you finish a piece, do you feel lighter or heavier? Heavier. Always heavier. Then you're not done processing. Keep writing, but also keep living. Make sure you're building something new, not just deconstructing what was broken." It was the best advice anyone had given me. I returned from Vermont with new perspective and a draft of a longer memoir about my experience. Not just the confrontation at the birthday party, but everything that led up to it. The slow realization that my childhood was built on lies. The moment I found the emails, the choice to expose the truth publicly. The aftermath. Mom read the draft and cried through most of it. "This is beautiful and heartbreaking. Is it accurate? I've been so deep in it. I can't tell anymore if I'm remembering things correctly, or just how I felt about them. It's accurate." She flipped back through pages. "There are a few details slightly off, but nothing that changes the truth of what happened. Will it hurt you? If I publish this? Hurt me?" Mom looked confused. Having all these private details public. People knowing about the accident, the suicide attempt, the custody battle. "Honey, the truth can't hurt me more than the lies already have." She took my hands. "If this book helps one other person realize they're not alone, then every painful detail is worth it." I spent the spring revising, sending chapters to Professor Rosario and Hadley Brixton for feedback, cutting scenes that felt self-indulgent, adding context where readers might be confused. By April, I had a complete manuscript, 347 pages, 89,000 words. The entire story of how I discovered my mother and lost my father in the process. Professor Rosario helped me find a literary agent, someone who specialized in memoir and was interested in stories about family trauma. The agent, Vera Delacroix, read the manuscript in 2 days and called me immediately. This is powerful. Really powerful. I think I can sell this. Sell it? Like to a publisher? That's the goal. But I need you to be prepared for what comes next. If this gets published, your family will likely see it. Your father might try to stop publication. Are you ready for that fight? I've been fighting for 2 years already. What's one more battle? Vera sent the manuscript to editors in May. By June, we had 3 offers. By July, I'd signed a contract with a small independent press that specialized in narrative nonfiction. They wanted to publish within a year. I turned 19 the day I signed the contract. Mom took me and Camden out to celebrate. We went to the same expensive restaurant we'd gone to after my first semester. This time, we could actually afford it. Camden raised his glass of soda. To telling the truth even when it's hard. We clinked glasses. That summer, I worked with an editor named Iris Kumalo on final revisions. She pushed me to dig deeper in some sections, cut others entirely. The process was painful, but necessary. By September, we had a final manuscript ready for production. The book was scheduled to release in April of my junior year. The press planned a small marketing campaign, some podcast interviews, a few readings at bookstores. Nothing major, but enough to get the book into readers' hands. I was terrified, excited, nauseous most days. 3 weeks before publication, I got a cease and desist letter from Dad's lawyer. He was threatening to sue for defamation and invasion of privacy, claiming the book contained false statements that damaged his reputation. Vera wasn't worried. Everything in your book is documented. We have the emails, the court records, the text messages. Let him sue. It'll just give the book more publicity. Still, I had to sit for a deposition, answer questions from Dad's lawyer about specific passages in the book, provide evidence for every claim I'd made. It was exhausting. 3 hours of hostile questions designed to make me doubt my own memories. But I had the documents. I had the truth. And in the end, that was enough. Dad dropped the lawsuit a week before publication. His lawyer must have advised him that going to trial would only confirm everything I'd written. The book released on a Tuesday in April. Mom and Camden came to my first reading at a bookstore in downtown Portland. 20 people showed up. Not a huge crowd, but enough to fill the small space. I read the opening chapter, the one about finding the emails on Dad's laptop. My voice shook at first, but steadied as I went. When I finished, a woman in the back raised her hand. How did you find the courage to expose your family like this? I didn't think of it as courage. I thought of it as survival. I needed to tell the truth so I could stop living in someone else's lie. More questions. About the writing process. About my relationship with Mom now. About whether I had any regrets. Do you regret confronting your father and stepmother at the party? Someone asked. No. It needed to happen. Could it have been done differently? Maybe. But in that moment, with all those people who'd been fed lies about my mother for years, it felt like the only way to make the truth undeniable. The reading ended. People came up to buy books, to share their own stories of parental alienation, to tell me they'd been through something similar and felt less alone after reading my story. One woman waited until everyone else had left. She was maybe 50, wearing a business suit like she'd come straight from work. I'm your Aunt Christy, she said quietly. I recognized her from the birthday party, Bridget's sister, the one who'd called my confrontation inappropriate. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I came to apologize. She pulled out a copy of my book from her bag. I read this last week. I had no idea. Bridget told us such a different story. Most people believed her story. It was easier. I believed it because I wanted to. Because Bridget is my sister, and I didn't want to think she was capable of that kind of cruelty. Aunt Christie's eyes filled with tears. But you were just a child. You deserved to know your mother. And I should have questioned why you didn't. You couldn't have known. I could have tried. She set the book on the table between us. I showed this to Bridget. Told her she needed to apologize. She refused. Said you made everything up for attention. That sounds about right. I'm done enabling her. I told her we're not speaking until she faces what she did. She chose to cut me off instead. I'm sorry. Don't be. Some relationships aren't worth keeping if they require you to ignore the truth. Aunt Christie pulled out a pen. Would you sign my book? I signed it. To Aunt Christie. Thank you for listening. She left and I stood there in the empty bookstore, holding my book, feeling like maybe something had shifted. Maybe the truth actually did matter. The book sold steadily over the next few months. Not a bestseller, but enough copies that the press ordered a second printing. I did more readings, more interviews, some podcasts, a few radio shows. People reached out constantly. Other victims of parental alienation, therapists who wanted to use the book with clients, lawyers working on custody cases. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been touched by this kind of family trauma in some way. In June, I got an email from someone named Teresa Lockhart. She said she was a social worker who'd been involved in my original custody case. She'd testified on Dad's behalf about Mom's instability. I wanted to reach out because after reading your book, I realized I was wrong. Your father and his lawyers presented a very specific narrative about your mother. I believed them because I didn't have access to the full picture. I'm deeply sorry for my role in keeping you from her. I didn't know how to respond. This woman had been part of the system that separated me from Mom, but she was also trying to make amends. I wrote back. I appreciate you reaching out. I know you were doing your job with the information you had. The system failed my mother. You were part of that system, but you weren't the entire problem. She responded, Still, I should have dug deeper, asked more questions. Your story has changed how I approach these cases now. I'm more skeptical of narratives that paint one parent as a complete villain. Thank you for writing this. It felt like closure of a sort. Not complete, but enough to soften some of the anger I'd been carrying. Summer ended and I started my senior year. I was taking mostly writing workshops and literature classes, planning to graduate with a degree in creative nonfiction. Maybe go to graduate school for writing. Maybe just keep writing and see what happened. Camden was a junior in high school now, thriving. He'd joined the debate team and was surprisingly good at it. All those years watching family arguments had given him skills in rhetoric and persuasion. He'd reconnected with Dad tentatively. Brief texts, occasional phone calls, nothing deep. Dad had apologized for fighting the custody change. He hadn't apologized for anything else. Do you think he'll ever actually admit what he did? Camden asked one night. I doubt it. Admitting it would mean facing everything he's lost. His business, his reputation, his relationship with both his kids. That's too much for most people to handle. Do you ever miss him? The dad he used to be before all this? Sometimes. I miss the dad I thought he was. But I don't think that person ever really existed. He was always someone who could lie to protect himself. I just didn't see it until the lies were about something I cared about. Camden nodded. Bridget called me last week. What did she want? To tell me I was breaking her heart, that I was choosing you over her, that I'd understand when I was older how much she sacrificed for this family. What did you say? I told her sacrifice means nothing if it's built on hurting someone else. She hung up on me. Good. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from shared understanding. In October, I got an email from a television producer. They wanted to option my book for a limited series, dramatize the story, make it accessible to a wider audience. I discussed it with Mom and Camden. Mom was hesitant. She didn't love the idea of actors portraying us, of our private pain becoming entertainment. But she also understood that stories reach people in different ways. Camden thought it was cool. You could finally cast someone attractive to play me instead of the awkward mess I actually am. We negotiated with the producers for months. I wanted creative control over the script. They wanted full rights. We compromised. They'd consult me on major plot points. I'd review scripts before filming. They'd change names and details enough to provide some legal protection, but keep the emotional truth intact. The deal closed in January of my senior year. By then, the book had sold over 30,000 copies. For a small press memoir, that was considered successful. The producers promised the series would reach millions. I graduated in May with honors. Mom and Camden were there. So was Professor Rosario. And Vera, my agent. And Iris, my editor. All the people who'd helped me turn pain into purpose. Bridget didn't come. Dad didn't come. I didn't expect them to. But Camden had secretly invited Aunt Christy, who showed up with flowers and tears. You did it, she said. You survived them and you thrived. That's the best revenge. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It had stopped being about revenge the moment I started healing instead of just hurting. After graduation, I got a job at a nonprofit that helped children in foster care and custody disputes. I used my experience to advocate for kids whose voices were being silenced by the adults who were supposed to protect them. It wasn't exactly related to my English degree, but it felt more meaningful than anything else I could imagine doing. The television series began filming in August. They'd cast relatively unknown actors to play younger versions of me, Mom, Dad, and Bridget. I visited the set once. It was surreal watching someone else portray the worst moments of my life, but also cathartic, like I was watching from outside myself. Finally, gaining perspective. The actress playing me, a woman named Quinn Verity, pulled me aside during a break. I just want you to know I'm trying to honor your story, not exploit it. I appreciate that. Can I ask you something? Quinn hesitated. In the script, there's the scene where you find the emails, where you break down crying. Did that really happen that way? No, I didn't cry when I found them. I went numb. Complete shock. The crying came later, after I'd processed what they meant. Would you mind if I played it that way instead? The numbness first? That would be more accurate. She made a note. Thanks. I want to get this right. The series premiered in February, almost 4 years after the birthday party confrontation. 6-hour-long episodes covering my childhood. The discovery of the emails, the confrontation, and the aftermath. Mom and Camden and I watched the first episode together in Mom's apartment. It was strange seeing our lives translated into television. Some details were changed. Some scenes were condensed. But the emotional core remained true. The show got incredible reviews. Critics praised the nuanced portrayal of parental alienation. Viewers flooded social media with their own stories. Therapists recommended it to clients. Family lawyers used it in training, and people started recognizing me. Not constantly, but enough that I'd occasionally be stopped in coffee shops or bookstores. People thanking me for sharing my story, telling me it had helped them leave toxic family situations, or reconnect with alienated parents, or recognize manipulation in their own relationships. One woman approached me at the grocery store. She was maybe 60, wearing a gardening apron like she'd come straight from her yard. I just wanted to thank you. I haven't seen my daughter in 15 years because my ex-husband convinced her I was a bad mother. After your show aired, she reached out. We're having dinner next week. I'm so glad. She started crying right there in the produce section. You gave me hope. I thought I'd never get her back. I hugged this stranger who understood exactly what Mom had gone through, what thousands of parents went through, the particular agony of loving a child who'd been taught not to love you back. The show was nominated for several awards. It won a few. I went to one ceremony with Mom and Camden. We dressed up, took photos, pretended to belong in rooms full of celebrities and industry people. When Quinn won for her portrayal of me, she used her acceptance speech to talk about the real issue of parental alienation. She mentioned Mom by name, thanked her for surviving long enough to reunite with me. Mom cried through the whole speech. In the 3 years since the show aired, my life has settled into something resembling normal. I'm 25 now, still working at the nonprofit, still writing, though I haven't published another book yet. Maybe someday, when I have something else worth saying. Camden is in college studying psychology. He wants to specialize in family therapy, help other families avoid the kind of dysfunction ours wallowed in. He still talks to Dad occasionally, still refuses to speak to Bridget. Mom is happy. Really, genuinely happy in a way she wasn't before. She got promoted at her law firm, started dating someone nice named Vincent who treats her with respect. She's rebuilding the life that was taken from her. As for Dad and Bridget, I hear things occasionally. Through Camden, through people who knew them. Their marriage is apparently strained. Dad's business never fully recovered. Bridget deleted all her social media and now works at a nonprofit helping at-risk youth. The irony isn't lost on anyone. They never apologized. Not to me, not to Mom. They've apparently convinced themselves that they were the real victims in all of this, that I destroyed their lives for attention. Maybe they need to believe that to live with themselves. I've made peace with never getting an apology. Some people aren't capable of the kind of self-reflection that leads to genuine remorse. And that's not my problem to fix. Last week, I got a letter forwarded from my publisher. The return address was from a women's prison 3 states away. Inside was a handwritten note from a woman named Ileana serving time for child endangerment. She'd read my book and recognized herself in my dad and Bridget. I kept my kids from their father because I was angry at him, told them he didn't love them, didn't care about them. I thought I was protecting them. Your book made me realize I was hurting them. I've written to my ex-husband, asked him to bring the kids to visit, to let me apologize. I don't know if he will, but I had to try. Thank you for helping me see what I'd done. I read the letter 3 times. Then I wrote back. It's never too late to tell the truth. I hope your kids give you the chance to make amends. You can't undo the past, but you can stop adding to the damage. I don't know if my letter reached her, but I hope it did. That's the thing about sharing your story publicly. You never know who needs to hear it, who might see themselves in your experience and choose differently, who might find the courage to leave, or return, or simply tell the truth. My truth started with a stack of printed emails at a birthday party. It continued through police stations and courtrooms and therapy offices and publishing houses. It became a book, a television series, a career helping other kids fight for their right to know both their parents. But mostly it became freedom. Freedom from the lie that I was abandoned. Freedom to build a relationship with my mother based on honesty instead of manipulation. Freedom to define family on my own terms rather than accepting someone else's definition. I still think about that night sometimes. Standing in Bridget's living room, reading those emails aloud while everyone stared. The silence after I finished. The weight of truth in a room that had been built on lies. It was the scariest thing I'd ever done. And the most necessary. Because silence protects the people who hurt you. And speaking up protects everyone who comes after. I chose speaking up. And I'd make that choice again every single time.